A reminder for everyone to mute their microphones unless they're presenting or have questions. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Delegate Jacobs, could you please offer prayer this morning?
I sure will. Thank you, Delegate Adams. If you all bow your head, dear Heavenly Father, I pray that unity may prevail in this state and on the Eastern Shore. Help me to be an instrument of your peace, and help us in this state and in this Eastern Shore delegation come together to resolve issues that affect us all. Amen.
Amen. Members, I'd like to have a motion to approve minutes from last week. Those were given to you in your packet. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. Let's say good morning. And today we're going to have three presentations. The Maryland Association of Community Colleges Executive Director, who is going to make a brief introduction to the delegation. Thank you for being there. After that, we will have our Eastern Shore of Maryland Educational Consortium with all of our friends and superintendents of the Eastern Shore. Finally, we'll have a special presentation from the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. As we all know, the budget process is interesting and worthy of serious discussion on priorities for us. So today you will hear about what's happening there in St. Michael's and how we would like to help them as we move forward. So with that being said, Brad Phillips, MACC, good morning.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Delegate Adams, for allowing me to just sort of briefly introduce myself to the Eastern Shore delegation. Again, my name is Brad Phillips, and I am the semi-new Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges. I want to take the moment to sort of introduce myself because I haven't had a chance to do that as I took over from Bernie Sadusky during the pandemic. Many of you know the former executive director, Bernie Sadusky. I worked for him before taking this role. I consider him essentially a mentor and a guide to me, and I want you all to kind of continue the same relationship, hopefully, that you had with him at MAC, that you can have with me as well. The Eastern Shore is critical to a lot of our economic development and our workforce. I have 3 community colleges in the Eastern Shore, starting with Cecil College, Chesapeake College, and Warwick Community College. Many of you know that the long-serving president of Warwick Community College is stepping down this June. He's another just incredible mentor and guide to me as I've been in my role at the Maryland Association of Community Colleges. And he's really been an outstanding advocate for the state, entire state, when it comes to community colleges. We're sorely going to miss him, but I want you to know that you can reach out to me and work with me on any issues that you have regarding community colleges, higher education in general. I think just like the prayer, we're better united when we can speak in one voice for community colleges across the state. And I hope to do so. And The budget has been released. It is an interesting process, as you just said. We're very pleased with what we have in the governor's budget. We're pleased to see there's 15 million additional money for one-time deferred maintenance usage. We would really implore you to help us maintain that level of commitment from the state. It's not about the increase, really. It's about parity in funding across higher education as a whole. We have been striving for this 29% funding per FTE that's given to the four-year institutions for 27 years. And this is just the second year we've actually achieved that statutory commitment from the governor's budget, and we want to hang on to it. So with that, I won't take any more of your time. I know you have a very, very busy agenda. Just again, thank you. Brad Phillips, reach out to me at any time. My phone number is 443-284. Actually, let me give you my work number here. 410-974-8117. And I'll be happy to help any way that I can. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. And we're not so busy that we can't take some time and ask some questions. It's good
Sure.
to have met you through this today. Delegate Hornberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and happy Friday to you, Mr. Phillips. Thank you so much for coming to Eastern Shore delegation. Of course,
Absolutely.
represent Cecil County. I'm a proud graduate of Cecil College. One of the best things to ever happen in my life from a matriculation standpoint. I just wanted to put on your radar, I've been asked by Delegate Feldmark to co-sponsor two of her bills. One bumps up the CADE formula and from a percentage, and then the other one deals with this reimbursement per pupil that you had mentioned. So I hope you're working close with her. They seem to be really good bills. And she's also a big advocate for community colleges. So just keep up the good work, and we'll try to get those bills across the finish line.
Thank you so much, Delegate Hornberger. And you absolutely are a champion too. I know you've worked on transfer issues for a number of years for us. So thank you so much.
Yep.
We really want to see some changes with the Promise Scholarship too this year to really help populations that have not been afforded aid. So that's something that I hope you will see once that bill once it gets dropped. And if you have any questions, we really, really want to decentralize that scholarship program. It's not because of any reason that MHEC is doing it poorly. We just think the best way is to have it at the college level where we know exactly how to help students.
Any other questions from the members? Brad, how is dual enrollment and programs related to transferring credits to four-year universities? How's that going? Could you just give us just a brief update through your eyes how that's looking?
Yes. Well, starting with dual enrollment, we've seen extraordinary growth in dual enrollment opportunities. I think at Chesapeake College, for example, we're approaching 30% of enrollment as being from dual enrolled students. It's a tremendous opportunity for students to get their associate's degree, licensure, certification at no cost to them as the funding comes from the public school systems. But we acknowledge the strain that it has on our local school systems. And I just want to mention that it also is a strain when we only get reimbursed 75% of the cost for those students. At some point, we just can't continue to maintain the quality of instruction at 75% of the cost. So that's something I also want to flag. The other question you had regarding transfer is it continues to be a work in progress and a struggle. I know that in 2021 legislative session, we had the Transfer with Success Act pass. It took quite a considerable amount of time and effort to get the regulations for that statute across the finish line with MHEC, but they did a very good job and a thorough job at revamping what the process looks like. It's just at the beginning stages as we sort of figure out how best to align our course criteria across all public four-year and two-year institutions so that we can see how well they transfer. And I think starting in the fall, we'll be able to collect the data on how well students are transferring. So we'll have a little better picture. Good questions, though.
Thank you. I know those are top line for you and also your customers, those and families and students that are trying to continue their education. Okay, thank you very much, and have a good day, Brad. Our next presenter is our dear friend, Dr. Griffith, who I've gotten to know well over the years, and in her new role, I'm anxious to hear from her and from all of our superintendents who thank you for the service that you provided us over these years, especially under COVID and with transformation in our public education system and how we're funding that. So I'm anxious to hear how things are going. Sure, our members are as well. And good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Chair Adams. It's great to see everyone. And I will be very brief because I'm going to turn it over to the superintendents. I want to thank you all for this opportunity. We did send you 3 handouts that Betsy does have if anybody else on the call would like to have the fact sheet, our CIP, and also our legislative priorities. But we really appreciate this time. We know it needs to be a collaborative effort. I also want to thank a lot of you that were in Annapolis yesterday or on the call yesterday when we talked about Pillar 1, early childhood. That was very productive. And I think we highlighted some of the challenges that we have, but I think we also came up with some possible solutions to work towards. So that's what this is all about. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jeff Lawson, who is the chair of ESMEC. Dr. Lawson.
Good morning, everyone. Chairman Adams and the members of the delegation, thank you for the opportunity to share our 2023 legislative initiatives and have a conversation about public education on the shore. I'm Jeff Lawson, superintendent from Cecil County Public Schools and president of ESMEC. For public school systems in Maryland today, we are extremely excited to embark on the transformation of the educational system with the blueprint. However, this has been a difficult year, rebounding from COVID implications and shifting class schedules due to the significant teacher and staff shortage. On the shore, we are fortunate to have a group of school system leaders who effectively lead our school systems through difficult times while keeping the focus on teaching and learning. At this time, I'd like to ask the superintendents of each school system on the shore to introduce themselves by alphabetical order, with the school system starting with Caroline.
Thank you, Dr. Lawson. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the time. Derek Simmons, Caroline County Public School Superintendent.
Good morning, everyone. Dave Bromwell, Superintendent, Dorchester County Public Schools. Good to see you all again this year.
I think I'm next. Karen Couch, Superintendent, Kent County.
I think I'm next. Patty Salins, Queen Anne's County.
Good morning, everyone. John Gaddis, Somerset County.
Good morning, Sharon Pepukai, Talbot County Public School Superintendent.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Rager. I'm Chief Finance and Operating Officer, Assistant Superintendent for Wycomico County Public Schools. Our Superintendent, Dr. Micah Soffer, sends regards, but couldn't be here this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Lou Taylor, Worcester County Public Schools. A special hello to my delegation, Senator Carrozza and Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, everyone. Members of the delegation, you've previously received from our ESMEC Executive Director, Dr. Griffiths, 2 exhibits, which at this time I'd like to review with you. The first exhibit is a listing of our 5 legislative initiatives for 2023. The first is to provide funding in each and establish internet broadband connectivity in rural areas to make sure our students have access to online instruction and essential resources to be successful. As school systems, we continue to provide access to the internet, such hotspots, and each home needs a reliable source for the internet. The second is to sustain state education funding as outlined in the blueprint for Maryland's future. We need the sustainability of funding to strengthen our early childhood education programs in particular, meet the needs of students with learning challenges, as well as others articulated in the blueprint. We need to encourage Maryland's universities and colleges to recruit and admit students pursuing a teaching degree. There is a critical teaching shortage. Maryland does not graduate enough teachers to meet the needs of our state. Currently on the shore, we have 99 teacher vacancies, 165 support staff vacancies, and what might be even more problematic is nearly 300 teachers who are on a provisional certificate. And oftentimes we find ourselves bringing in teachers who are not fully certified and oftentimes aren't aware of the demands of the job. And our experience in Cecil has been sometimes you find just outstanding candidates who are naturals, and other times you find people who come into the classroom in 2-3 weeks realize they just tap out immediately. So I think what flies under the radar is the provisional certificates. Those folks, it's just a real challenge. We ask that you would oppose any legislation that negatively impacts the authority of local boards and superintendents of schools. We believe that our local boards and superintendents are in the best position to understand the needs of our community, which I think is particularly relevant for us here on the shore. We're asking also that you support the FY23 capital projects request for the Eastern Shore listed on the back of one of the exhibits. 8 of our school systems are seeking FY24 state capital project funds from the IAC. And in Cecil in particular, we're proud that our new Northeast Middle and High School project is underway, and it's one of the largest projects we've seen really in the history of the county. The second exhibit provides a snapshot in time of the students that we serve and the services that are provided, such as transportation, food, nutrition, and health services. And at this time, we'd welcome any questions or comments from the delegation.
Okay, good morning and thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Cruz, I think you had your hand up first and I saw you. So go ahead, Senator Cruz.
Thank you. And I always look forward to our Eastern Shore superintendents participating with us in this Eastern Shore delegation meeting. And I want to thank you all for your leadership through COVID and the challenges right now with the implementation of the Kerwin Blueprint. 2 quick questions and perhaps, one of the superintendents from my district will respond or both very briefly. The state superintendent was before the Senate Education, Energy, and Environment Committee last week. So it was an opportunity for us just to see not only where he was with curriculum, but also to use it as an opportunity to underscore the local authority and flexibility you need for implementation. I thought one takeaway was the superintendent acknowledging and agreeing that you all needed flexibility on the requirement of the national certification of the teachers. So given that, that's been an issue that you all have raised, I didn't know, maybe how we could do some immediate follow-up, for some traction, especially since you've outlined the teacher shortage as a priority. And also on the other priorities, tying it to Kerwin implementation, if you could just let me know, and the whole delegation know the 1 or 2 where you really want us to zero in on so we can work it in committees and on the floor. I'll start with Ms. Superintendent Taylor and then quickly to Dr. Gaddis.
Yes, Mary Beth, thank you. There's a lot of good things with the Maryland Blueprint, so don't take this as a negativity. The thing that worries Worcester County in general, and I'll get to your specific questions, is the expense of it, where the formula comes into play here and the amount of money that locally we're going. In fact, I left a 6:45 meeting this morning with the president of our county commissioners about a number of things, and we talked about that. The National Board Certification is a good program. Don't get me wrong there either, but it's going to be very expensive for us with that program. Plus, on top of that, I am and this is a personal and professional belief, I don't think the National Board Certification should play a role in the Maryland Blueprint. It's too cumbersome. It doesn't really, in my opinion, we have some mediocre teachers that end up being certified at the national level. And I'm not so sure that will promote the teaching profession the way it's set out to move forward. So those are my 2 concerns. Again, I'm not saying the national certification should be a part of teachers or education, but I have some serious concerns the weight is placed on that moving through the Maryland Blueprint. I think you had a second question, Mary Beth. I'm sorry, did I miss one?
If there was just any, you highlighted the cost and we talked about the national certification. Is there anything else with the local flexibility or authority you want to highlight?
No, I think it's, they're building the plane as it's going down the runway, and any experience that I've had in 39 years when you're building a plane going down the runway, one, the good side is there's room for adjustments. But then on the second part of that, it makes it difficult for planning purposes and for us to set a vision moving forward. Because, right now our first draft of the first part of the Maryland Blueprint is due March the 15th, I believe. Don't have that in front of me, but I believe it's March the 15th. And my concern is that we get it as we're building this runway, we do all this extensive work. And I think I speak on behalf of all 9 of our superintendents. This new Maryland Blueprint is taking an enormous amount of time. And in my opinion, time away from some things we should be doing for kids. So I have some concerns about it. Do I think there's a lot of good to it? I absolutely do. And I don't have the answer. So it's difficult to be critical. I am not sure as much time as we're putting into it. And we need to slow the bus down a little bit and get settled here a little bit. We're coming off 2.5 of, again, in my 39-year career, 2.5 most difficult years in running an educational system. And yet we're dumped right into this Maryland Blueprint. And I'll keep saying it for the 4th time. There's some great things about the Maryland Blueprint, but I think the pace of it and the expectations that are not all together there yet are making it even more challenging, at least for me here in Worcester County. And I would say the same for those and my colleagues that are on the call. And I could go on and on about this, but I don't want to take all the time. I hope I answered your question, Mary Beth.
Dr. Gaddis, did you want to comment?
Sure. I think Mary Beth, just, to echo what Lou said, oops, sorry, phones and watches are talking. I think when I look at it from my perspective, being so small, number one, Lou put it nicely about the national board certification. We have about 15 teachers who want to do it. It's a big task. And honestly, again, as Lou said, from my perspective, it's a checklist. No one's ever shown me the correlation that becoming national board certified makes you the best teacher. Some of my best teachers don't even want to go through it because it's such a cumbersome task. So in a world where we need, and we're being told to design so many different pathways, it seems like right here, we're not. We're thinking this is the way to go. And as a superintendent, as a person, I don't think that's the best way. We're really trying to pigeonhole teachers to go into this, and it's going to cause some issues. In Somerset, we are 75% funded from the state. And so funding still will continue to be an issue for us from the local. We're meeting with them like everybody is to talk about what this looks like. The concern is down the road. We're working hard to get the teacher pay up and to do the other things. But it really is going to be a burden on the county. They understand what's coming, but I am concerned how that's going to look moving forward. Overall, and again, I'm just echoing what Lou said because they were my concerns. The burden that we have, the amount of work, and from, again, my perspective, the lack of communication and clarity. Listen, I understand it, I support it, but we have something I can tell you right now from Somerset, the plan's going to go in the 15th, and it's not going to be the best plan because we don't have direction on some of the areas, and we simply don't have the staff to do everything that we need to do. I'm pulling every supervisor, my deputy superintendent, I'm in there, my directors are in there, and it's just really a lot of work. And so the implementation timeline, most of the Eastern Shore delegation will remember when we all went through accreditation for growth. And one of the things that was through the middle states evaluation, one of the things that was stressed in that program was a simple and the word just left me, a flexible timeline of implementation. And so in trying to we agree, the blueprint is a good thing, but to implement it the way it's being done, it's really a lot to do with trying to now deal with new legislation that may come out, recovering from COVID. And so I don't want to seem like I'm whining about it. It is a positive thing, but it's just a lot right now. And so people are being pulled in different ways, and we're having to, as you heard about the teacher shortage, we're trying to find teachers and recruit now year round. There's just a lot going on right now, but there are some very good things. But those are just some initial concerns, that we have about it.
Okay, Senator DeRosa, is that okay? Delegate Hornberger?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Lawson, my favorite school superintendent, for presenting today. Big things
I
happening.
want that in writing.
Yes. And we had a little get together yesterday, thanks to Delegate Greist, to talk about our 3 and 4-year-old students that are going to be coming onto the system. I know that Cecil's making great strides in actively recruiting, especially those in the lower income threshold families, to come in and start participating in that pre-K system, which is really awesome. And one of the things that we talked about was the infrastructure that has to go into servicing the student population, some of those challenges. And as we're endeavoring on the new construction there for Northeast, my hometown, are we seeing any standards? Are we seeing any, language for construction that's coming down from the state saying, hey, when you look at building a new school, you should have this type of playground, you should have this dedicated entrance, specialty restrooms, classrooms, etc., so that when we're doing this new construction, we're not having to go back a year later or 2 years later to service this population? Is there standardized language for that you're seeing?
Thank you, Delegate Hornberger. And as usual, you've done your homework. So I think the short answer is none that I'm aware of. However, I would say that there are significant facility, I'll say, restrictions as it relates to providing early childhood education. And I think along those lines, and all the superintendents know this, and I'm not sure if delegates and senators know, but the local portion of our budget for the first time has been delivered to us. And now they are not certain what MOE is yet, but in the preliminary reports we've seen is that money at the county level is now earmarked for specific populations. And one of the bigger populations is early childhood education. And for instance, in Cecil County, our line item in the state side is just over $3 million for pre-K. And on the county side, it's just over $2 million. So there's a set aside, if you will, of just over $5 million to serve pre-K, which I think on the surface might sound good. But when you do the math on that, it comes out to about $7,000 per child, when the per pupil average for children in all of our systems is in the neighborhood of $15,000, give or take. And so what we're finding, Delegate Hornberger, is first off is that these 4-year-olds are a very, very needy group, whether it's in terms of behaviors we're seeing, academic needs we're seeing, some of the facility challenges. And then the funding side is considerably lower than what it would be for a kindergartner or a first grader. And so where the very need is, the funding isn't there. And I think that has really caught a lot of people by surprise. It's not uncommon to see a 4-year-old come into one of our programs in diapers. We're seeing that all over the place. And clearly a teacher's not standing there with 10 or 20 students when you have 3 or 4-year students who may need to be changed. And most of us are parents. We know what that looks like.
Yep.
So that's just one piece of it. And I appreciate the focus. I mean, if that's one single takeaway I could give, I would ask the elected officials to peel into the actual budget of your local school system and see what is required that is a set aside. And my larger concern, and I'll close on this, is that there's so much money both at the state level and the local level that is earmarked for specific populations of students, that the child that's most likely to be challenged in terms from a funding perspective is a student who is not from poverty, a student who is not a student with a disability or a pre-K, so that huge amounts of money are very earmarked. And that's the biggest criticism, if you will, from a budgetary perspective, is so much more of our money is prescribed and what we would call restricted. But I hope that answers your question, Kevin.
Yeah,
Thank you
no,
again.
that's a great takeaway. And, we got our subcommittee assignments. I'm going to continue to serve on the educational subcommittee on Ways and Means. So that's something I can champion for as well as my colleagues. Thank you, Dr. Lawson.
Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, we've touched on it briefly. We had that meeting in Annapolis. Many representatives from various organizations came in and did a great presentation about the first pillar of implementation of the blueprint. And I was wondering if Dr. Griffith could give a 2-minute synopsis. I think it would be very helpful for a lot of people that are on this call this morning to get an idea of just what was discussed. And I felt like it was really, really informative.
Sure. It was a very productive meeting. I was looking for my notes, but I'm just going to go from memory. It was a very productive meeting. We started out by talking about Pillar 1 and the needs for early childhood. And I did emphasize that the superintendents felt that the timeline was, again, we're going back to what Dr. Taylor said, the timeline is really restricted. But we really want to get 4-year-olds in first before we start working with 3-year-olds. But one of the challenges on the shore is getting private providers involved. And we talked about how rural districts have a difficult time getting, first of all, finding daycare providers. There are several counties that don't even have daycare centers. So it was good to have Head Start and Shore Up and the Maryland State Department for Child Care there. And they talked about the differences in restrictions between childcare and schools. And there is a disconnect there in the different regulations, if you will, in setting up P3 and P4. When I say P4, 4-year-olds and 3-year-old programs. So we did talk about that disconnect that was there, not only for eligibility, but also for some of the restrictions for certification. And a lot of them said they can't compete with the school systems and pay what the school systems pay when it comes to private daycares and it comes to Shore Up and those. And then we talked a lot about teacher shortage and support staff shortage. And I know a lot of people think of support staff as custodians and bus drivers, but it's also instructional assistants. And they're needed in the classrooms because you have to have a ratio of 1 to 10 in your smaller, for your smaller students. So we did talk about that at length. One productive thing that really came out of the conference, I felt, and maybe you feel the same, is that we did have federal representation on the call, and they agreed to set up, I think it was Senator Van Hollen's office is going to set up some dialogue with some of these agencies to try to change some of the federal laws that are causing some challenges for them to be able to work with us. But the rural areas, it's just very difficult to, and I think we all go back to that timeline. We need a year to plan this. I mean, we're all sitting down at the table and talking about it now, and we talked about that yesterday. We need more time to be able to, as Mr. Taylor says, is to design the plane and make sure we're on the right course and get all the players at the table. So that was a real emphasis yesterday. We do know a lot of people are working diligently on getting home daycares up to speed, but again, the certification. And I understand that MSDE says there's going to be flexibility with certification, and they were on the call as well and said the same thing. But our plans are due March, and we don't have that flexibility in front of us. So it's just not jiving, if you will, when it comes to people saying you need to do something, and we'll look into it later. And later is not soon enough if we're going to make this work. So Delegate Jacobs, I don't think I did as well with my notes in front of me, but I think I covered what we talked about yesterday. It was a good.
Thank you very much. And I felt like it was important that there's a lot of people in this call this morning that are very interested in this topic. And I thought you did a great job. And I thought yesterday there were a lot of good points made of the disconnect and the challenges that we have trying to implement this in this time frame. So thank you again.
Dr. Griffith, I wasn't there yesterday, but after hearing your 2-minute synopsis, I feel like I've made up for lost time on that. Thank you. Delegate Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chairman Adams. First, I want to give a shout out to my 2017 Shore Leadership classmate, Caroline County Superintendent Simmons. Never know where Shore Leadership may take you, and it's good to see you. My question is to Superintendent Bromwell. It was good to hear your euphoria about the budget last weekend when we spoke about it, but since then, having a chance to digest it, what are your concerns in terms of the funding needs?
I think my colleagues have said things very well, especially going off of Senator Carrozza, Mr. Taylor, Dr. Gaddis. Just to give you an example of budget concerns and our requirements, every one of the superintendents on this call, we are nowhere near the larger school districts in having the people to take all this information and deal with it internally. Give you an example. My CFO just sent out a call or an email that we were supposed to receive all our information on how we're to input data to MSDE and the legislature on December 1st. We just got it yesterday. All right, January 26th. And while they are 2 months behind, we're still required to get everything in on time. So that's more of a real time on how things are going for all our districts, which is making us shake our head. And going back to Mr. Taylor's analogy of flying the plane, man, that plane's in the air. And we're trying to make it work. And there's a lot of concerns to go in with this. On our budget, I had shared with State Superintendent Shudry. I've also shared with you, Delegate Hutchinson. We have our Councilman Detmer on this call as well. I think he's doing double duty with the Star Democrat. But, I was sharing to them that, if there isn't some kind of look at our old funding formula, and Superintendent Shudry had pushed the new poverty index report. And I think it has a lot of pieces to it that are advantageous to definitely 5 counties on the shore and several counties across the state. It needs to be looked at. I mean, it includes census data, it includes the CEP, where Dorchester, Somerset, Baltimore City, and even Wycomico are part of that plan on feeding all our kids. There are major components. But I don't know if we're ready for that yet, because, I think it was a 91-page report that he put in, and I'm not even sure if it's being sponsored by anybody in the legislature at this time. But it's really interesting on how it's being put out, and it certainly could even the playing field on quite a few counties, because, I can say specifically, I'm the one with the most holes on the shore when it comes to filling certificated teaching positions. And, the interesting piece about that, going back to a nationally certified teacher, board certified, I had 10 teachers that said, yeah, I want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I said, but make sure, once you get this, I'm going to put you in my most needy schools. And they withdrew their application. So it's pieces like that are a factor in what we're trying to do, and the headache or the thing that gives you a stress headache about the blueprint. And again, the budget piece is really going to put a lot of pressure on the local jurisdictions, because we just received our numbers and I've been sharing them with the local county council on increased MOE funding. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Mounts.
Thank you, Chairman. And it's great to see everybody this morning. First, I just want to, I feel like I need to apologize to all of our superintendents, but there just isn't enough time for us to do our job properly. We'd be in each one of your offices every day. And I want to thank you for all that you're doing. Building a plane while it's trying to take off. It's a good analogy, but that's something that I would never really endorse doing. But that's what we're kind of dealing with. And that meeting that Delegate Grice organized, I was able to listen in on some of it. And I thought it was fantastic, getting dialogue and start trying to forward think and address some issues. But, we had a budget hearing in our committee this week. And Dr. Griffith, I wanted to make sure, I don't know if you've heard this before, but, the budget analyst came in and talked about the state budget, and they were explaining, revenues are where they're supposed to be. However, there's a budget problem because of unexpected education costs. And the problem was what's called farms. It's the free and reduced meals. And these a new number of students were brought into to the free and reduced meals, the farms, and that changed the budget projections, and it's caused a problem for the DLS analysts. And I was listening to this, but in the back of my mind, I know very well that each one of our districts has got huge financial cliffs that they're looking at, and the counties are trying to figure this out also. Are you, Dr. Griffith, have you been able to hear any of the legislative services budget analysis when they're doing their briefings and things like that?
I have not, but now I'm going to key in. I'm sure some of the superintendents have.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I should I try to arrange a dialogue with, or maybe that should be Delegate Grice, because he's sort of taking the lead on this, but it will be helpful for us to try to set up a dialogue back and forth, with the consortium or our specific superintendents to say, wait a minute, guys. Yeah, it looks right when you count the beans from where you sit in Annapolis, but here's the bean pile we're dealing with back home. What's the best way to handle that? And I hate to, I apologize. I got nothing against beans. Beans are great, a lot of carbs, but
I totally agree with you. I think ESMEC really needs to have a stronger voice when it comes to what's happening with the budget in reality. And that is something that we've discussed about making sure that we meet more often. And we do have that dialogue about reality versus, what's in paper and pencil. And what does it mean and what impact does it have, and have real data and real stories. So I think that's really important to do.
When we follow up with you offline to try to figure out the best way to do this and then come up, is that something we should try to execute in the next week or two, that type of a discussion?
Can I weigh in on that if you guys don't mind?
Yeah.
So after this meeting yesterday, I spoke with Delegate Solomon, and there will be a bill moved this session that will give some relief to our local school systems and all of our community partners. To what extent, we don't know yet. And it's obviously the majority party that will probably determine, what's going to be in that bill and what's not going to be in that bill. But I did ask him if I could be part of that process as well. And then I'll do my very best to. And I think Senator Carrozza, you're on EHE as well. So I think on your side, you definitely want to inject yourself in whatever might be developing on the Senate side. But we'll communicate any changes, anything that'll happen. And Kevin, you're on Ways and Means. So obviously that if anything happens, it'll be duly assigned between appropriations and Ways and Means as well. So something's going to happen. We just don't know. And the majority party was reluctant to really do much with Kerwin over time because 2 years when we passed Kerwin 2.0, that gave some relief, and it was to the heartburn of Rachel Hayes and the AIB. So I guess the concern that the AIB has is if we continue to push dates out, then I guess they feel like we're not making any meaningful progress toward implementing Kerwin. But now we're in a situation where we're in the weeds now in implementing this thing, and there's some realities that they have to come to grips with. So, and I think they're doing that.
Can I make a comment, Delegate Grice, regarding that? Just as an example, I think all superintendents will tell you we've seen a considerable increase in our state aid based on the numbers that came out last year, which again, they're at least they're putting the money up. But just one good example is that in our budget, we know that part of the blueprint expectations that we articulate in MOU with the Susquehanna Workforce Network. And I believe they get $62 per student or $66. But for us, it comes out to about $960,000 that's going to go to Susquehanna Workforce Network. We're in the process of coming up with an MOU with them, and I am not arguing that it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. But that's $1 million in our budget that looks like an increase, but in terms of raw school system operation, it's really not. It's just taking something we don't have. And again, for us, it will likely be job coaches, but it looks like an increase. And because of so to the average person, they say, well, look, the school system's getting another $1 million when it's almost simply a pass through. And that's just one of, several examples of how the actual rollout of the funding is working.
Yeah, and you'll get more than that because we were briefed a couple days ago on how the governor spent down our reserves, the rainy day fund. And so he has a line item in there for $500 million for Kerwin implementation, but didn't give any specifics on how that money was going to be spent. So we're going to have some specifics certainly before the end of session. And so you should expect actually more money. The issue is all the things that we were talking about over the last hour, and money's not going to be the answer to that. It's time and doing it right the first time,
Thank you.
Yeah, Speaker Pro Tem. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Yes, I'd like to just reiterate that the meeting that Delegate Christ had on yesterday was extremely productive. What I really appreciated was making sure that we had the Community Action Agency and the other entities that provide early Head Start and Head Start programs at the table, to which that conversation certainly should have happened some time ago, considering they're partners in our communities. What I would like to say, and I know it was referenced as the majority party and where they're going in a piece of legislation, given the fact that I'm a part of that, what I would like to do is to streamline this, and the information that Dr. Griffith has maybe bullet pointed from that meeting, but then also what we're hearing today from all of you superintendents, is to make sure that Delegate Grice has that, and so he can filter that to me. And while we're in leadership meetings and drafting this piece of legislation, then I'll have that information available. So it's not as fragmented. I know the senator had indicated he wants to have a meeting. That's good, but at the same time, let's make sure that that information is concise so we can keep moving forward, and we're all on the same page for the needs of the Eastern Shore. And then my last question, Mr. Chair, that I wanted to ask, I think is Dr. Taylor, Worcester County Superintendent. I know he referenced mediocre teachers in regards to the national certification. Can you just elaborate on what do you do now for mediocre teachers, regardless of them seeking out this national certification? Just what is the assessment, and how often does that take place so we can have more improved teachers versus just mediocre? If you can answer that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Sure. And maybe, I can relate that what we do with teachers who struggle in some areas, some of them will request this on their own without leadership in their buildings assigning. But we have a mentoring program in Worcester County right now for teachers, especially a real strong mentorship program with our first 2 to 3 year teachers, our beginning teachers. And we stay with them relatively full time they have a partner teacher or mentoring teacher in their buildings who work with them. We also have, we meet as a county with our new and first 2 or 3 year teachers on a regular basis. Now, the meetings are always available. They don't always attend, but we try because of their schedules and families and things of that nature. But what we do, when I say, I don't really mean, not every teacher comes in a superstar day one. And so with the challenges now and the expectations that are placed on teachers, which is incredible, and teaching every child to have them perform at the highest level. So we've developed mentoring programs here in Worcester. Every county does something different. And so we take a look at where we are with all our teachers. And a lot of times our senior teachers end up being our senior successful teachers end up being the ones who mentor those who have challenges. We also do a tremendous amount of professional development, more so than development, which takes a lot of time and money as well. But because of the expectations of all teaching staff, there's a reason for a teacher shortage. There's a reason why folks are not choosing at the magnitude they used to go into teaching. So we have to search those reasons out and try to find supports to help them and to move forward. And so that takes time, that takes money. That's just one more segment that really has nothing directly related to the blueprint that we have to do as superintendents and as school leaders. So maybe when I say mediocre teachers, maybe I should say those who have some challenges in different areas moving forward, working with our young people. And the reason for that is not that they're bad teachers or bad. Our kids have more challenges than ever before. I'm working extremely hard in Worcester County to make sure that I have a mental health counselor in every one of my buildings, as well as getting services as my colleagues. I'm speaking about my colleagues as well. The mental health coordinator in Worcester County here has her hands full. 10 years ago, there was no such thing in our schools because of what we're faced with. Not just pandemic related, but pandemic related. There's a whole element of support that needs to come there as well. So all this playing into that formula is really what I was speaking to.
Okay, I guess what I was looking for, how often do you do your assessment?
Well,
to see if there is professional improvement.
Well, if they're you can go in informally anytime. And so if we identify someone that is maybe struggling, and there are teachers who request our leaders to come in to get feedback. If you're a first year teacher, you're observed or assessed, 5 to 6 times a year until you receive tenure after year 3. And then a minimum of twice a year, but in some cases 3 to 5 times a year on average.
Okay, thank you. And then Maryland State Education Association, they have a bill in that would help address a couple of things that you mentioned with regards to, why the teacher shortage, and one of them being, while they're in their year's worth of training, while they're still in college and working in the school system, they're not being paid. So there is a request to try to incentivize them and certainly have them being paid so they can afford to stay in the profession. And then the other piece is an increase in mental health professionals. So hopefully, there can be some movement on that end. But thank you for your update and information. I appreciate it.
One other thing I'll share with you real quick, Delegate, is that we are working, Dr. Griffith and the 9 Eastern Shore superintendents are working very closely with our colleges and universities to grow their educational programs so that we can address locally that teacher shortage here on the shore. So just as an FYI.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So to all the superintendents, let me just close, and on behalf of the Eastern Shore delegation, thank you for the work that you do. I do want to reinforce Senator Moutz's point, which is essential in my opinion. Local control matters. So that was one of your initiatives, and the way that he described it is what good governance looks like. It's working with local county councils, it's working with county managers and executives in a collaborative way, open communication. It's also, in your world, making sure the boards of education are accountable to, the customers, the students and their parents. And I think bottom-up process matters as we're dealing with Kerwin. That surely was a state mandate, but I'd like hearing from the superintendents that priority, that we make sure that that your roles and the roles of the boards of education are maintained and frankly reinforced over time as we are implementing, because it's my humble opinion that when we get where we need to go with education over a period of time, it'll happen because we're getting feedback to the state. And the best way to do that is to make sure that that line of communication remains and that we trust it and that it has impact on decisions that are being made in Annapolis. So I want to thank you very much for the presentation today.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. So the next presentation is I'll call it a very special presentation for the delegation. Last week I talked, and maybe some other members of my delegation local with Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. I think all of our members will be having questions and concerns about budget and also very important priorities. So I would encourage all the members to do basically what I did, which is to reach out and let's put some of these conversations on the table. We'd like to try to keep it fairly, brief, 10, 15-minute conversations. But the purpose of these meetings is for us to come back and help communicate with the new administration, with the budget process. And to that point, Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum, you are a treasure, not only for the Eastern Shore, but for the state of Maryland. My first year in office, I think Pete Lesher invited me and gave me a tour of the museum and was thoroughly impressed with what was happening there. That was 8 years ago, and many things have progressed in a positive way. And I would encourage all of our members, if you've not been, to come, and also our colleagues on the Western Shore, have them come and spend some time there. I think they'll be impressed with the regional importance to this museum and why they're here today. So Liz LaCourte and Kristen Greenaway, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Delegate Adams. Can everybody see the screen? Wonderful. We'll get started with our chair of our Government Relations Committee, Jeff Vogel.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the entire delegation for having us here today and for your tireless leadership for our Eastern Shore communities. We have a brief presentation for you today, but first let me introduce the team that we have here. We have our President and CEO, Kristen Greenaway, our Chief Curator, Pete Lesher, our Vice President of Advancement, Liz LaCourte, and I have the honor of being a board member and chair of the Government Relations Committee. With that, let me turn it over to Kristen to dive right into our presentation.
Can anyone hear Kristen? Okay.
No.
Kristen, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear her.
All right, how's that?
Much better.
Good.
All right, thank you. It helps when you turn the mic on. All right, very special thanks to Delegate Adams, and thank you, Betsy Helmson, for arranging our participation today. Shortly, Pete will give an overview of our organization, but before he does, I really would like to quickly share our mission here, vision and values, give you a sense of who we are and what we're working to achieve. So here's our mission, and a key point of our mission is that we take responsibility for the entire Chesapeake Bay, which actually includes 3 states. And we're not just St. Michael's Maritime Museum, nor are we just Talbot County's Maritime Museum. And as we continue to center our mission-driven work within our communities, our future is not just in not what we do, but it's our impact, why we do it. We preserve the tools of working traditions that continue to evolve alongside stories of changing communities threatened by climate change. We invest in career development pathways for our shipwright apprentices, more on that soon, as well as our Rising Tide after-school program students, and more on that soon. We partner with community organizations to build belonging and meet individual needs. We focus on accessibility through every stage of your visit, ensuring a consistent, personalized experience for all our guests. People are at the center of what we do and why we do it. All right, our vision. We'll be touching on this later, but a key point here is our commitment, as I mentioned, to being a vital community partner. And our values, something we're very proud of, is that when you see our guests exploring campus, they don't typically have a phone in front of their faces unless it's being used as a camera. It's an experience. And our impact statement. This is a fairly new concept for museums. We have one, as we believe it's really vital that all our guests leave having had a meaningful experience and therefore are engaged with our mission. All right, Pete.
Thank you, Kristen. And speaking of impact, this cover of the New Yorker, we made national news shortly after we welcomed our millionth visitor through the gate. We were founded as a community effort to create a heritage tourism destination, but over time we've become so much more than that. And we do now welcome 80,000 guests from all 50 states and from overseas. The bulk of them coming from the Mid-Atlantic region. I can't tell you in this meeting everything that we do, but our role goes far beyond being a heritage tourism destination. We are an anchor in the community. We serve the community. We ask our community what is needed, and we responded with this program, an after-school boat building program for 6th through 12th grade. This is just their most recent product, this beautiful stand-up paddleboard, yes, made by the students, where they can see a reward, where they get their hands on, where they learn skills, where they actually, in one or two cases, aspire to go on to become one of our apprentices, and we'll get on to that. We provide intergenerational experiences. We seek to connect people in their own stories to this place. In the top right, actually, the family of a former lightkeeper, Harry Messick, just visited here. But you don't need to have such a personal connection. We try to connect everybody. And we do that through programs, we do that through our exhibitions, we do that through our on-water experiences. We are more than what you might typically think of as a museum. We're an educational institution, and part of that is our state-certified shipwright apprentice program, a 4-year, 8,000-hour program in which you learn more than the skills needed to maintain wooden boats. You learn welding and electrical. You get welding and electrical certifications through our partnership with Chesapeake College. And we believe in our graduates, we're preserving our skills and not just these historic vessels. We actually hire back the graduates of our apprentice program, most recently for the construction of the new Maryland Dove. That's just a taste, but I'll pass it back on to Kristen.
All right, thank you, Pete. All right, tourism. So we're a major anchor for tourism in the state. As Pete mentioned, guests visit us from all over the world. And while we do draw guests from every US state, the greatest majority, as you can see here, from the Mid-Atlantic region, and a significant number from our surrounding counties on the Eastern Shore. And a goal for our next 5-year strategic plan, which actually happens to start March 1, is to increase our annual visitation to 150,000 and our family membership base to 10,000. Right, economic impact. Okay, this is a really busy slide, our apologies. So in 2020, we commissioned from Rockport Analytics in Annapolis an economic impact report, and you've already received a copy of that. What I'd like to draw your attention to is our impact on Maryland as a state. That's $8.8 million in wages and salaries, $6.5 million in visitor spending, and $1.2 million in state and local taxes. And of course, eyes to the right, we couldn't have that level of state impact without adding exceptional value to our local economy, Talbot County and St. Michael's. Right, I mentioned earlier our commitment to being a vital community partner. Does anyone recognize the gentleman in the top photo winning the boat docking competition? All right, I'll save you the pain. It's Governor Hogan.
Larry Hogan.
There we go. Well done, Chris. Thank you.
I think we got a quorum.
I've noted here just a few of our partners that you may notice fall within your own jurisdiction. And very excitingly, we're very excited, and I hope you are too. We are partners with CWDI and Dorchester County's development of Cambridge Harbor. And that'll be, of course, over the next now to 10 years or so. Programming, a huge part of achieving our mission, as Pete mentioned earlier, is engaging with our youngest constituents through our PK through 12 programming. And this figure of 3,700, we're achieving that because our Director of Education works directly with educators, and they're developing together the curricula based on the school's needs. And we are also extremely proud of our privately funded bus scholarship program, which particularly has expanded our outreach to Dorchester, Wacomico, and Somerset counties. Now, why are we here today? So CBMEMS, our transformative master plan. 6 years ago, we commissioned from a nationally recognized architectural firm to help us re-envision CBMM and our campus for the next 20 plus years. And this plan was broken into 3 phases. Phase 1, you can't have a museum without a collection, which is why our initial focus was on ensuring the long-term care of the 80,000 plus objects in our collection. And just recently, as you'll see here, we opened our newly renovated and expanded Plummer Center for Museum Collections. And this $2 million project was funded mostly by private donations with 20% state support. And thank you all very, very much for your support. Phase 2, for those that have visited the museum, you'll have started your experience with trying to find the Welcome Center, way over the back of campus. So our new Welcome Center is now immediately on your left as you drive in. There's an image here on the bottom of the photo of the slide. This 12,000 square foot facility is a complete standalone museum experience in its own right. Ticketing, introductory interpretation, bathrooms, museum store, and 2 large new exhibitions, large spaces. Accessibility is paramount, and this is our first building completely ADA accessible. And this $10 million project is again funded mostly by private donations, leveraged by 11% state support. And we really look forward to welcoming you all later this year to the opening ceremony. And you'll see Johnny and Chris there signing the steel.
I see Jeannie Hadaway in the right there.
And I chose that photo deliberately, Chris. Well spotted. All right, phase 3. This is the rest of campus. And this photo, I love this photo. This is actually one of our boat Waterman's Appreciation Day in the boat docking competition. And this is what we're focusing on here today. It's imperative that we make campus even more accessible. We must address the threat that flooding has on our mission and our business. We've got to increase earned revenue, which goes hand in hand with achieving our mission. An expansion of our shipyard, as you'll see here on the left, is a key aspect of that. And why? It's not merely a shipyard, it's a living exhibition. And this increased capacity will allow us to take on more commissions, like building a new Maryland Dove. Right, this truly is a partnership, and for that we're extremely grateful to every one of you. And I cannot say thank you enough. Going into phase 3 of the master plan, this is where we need your support. And with that support, we can increase the number of people served. We can expand our role as an anchor for and a driver of tourism. Right, Liz, over to you, please.
Thank you, Kristen. So as Kristen said, today we are asking for your support in helping us achieve $1 million in the state capital budget. As Kristen mentioned earlier, this funding is imperative to achieve phase 3 of our master plan. This is the beginning of the vision for phase 3. The best planning, zoning, and engineering studies will ensure the future of this institution and its continued impact on the community and Maryland's economy. So we really need you.
And we're open up to any questions. Thank you very much for all your time.
Okay. Now I can't see because of the PowerPoint. If there's
I
any
will stop
questions.
sharing.
Okay, there we go. Any questions from the members? So to the museum, thank you for the presentation. Starting next week, and we'll talk about this in general business, we'll start making letters of support available for our vote. On these budget items, I know that there are a series of these. We surely have the Speaker Pro Tem with us, who's a leader and someone that we can work with these priorities. But more importantly, the Eastern Shore delegation is developing new relationships with the Moore administration, and it's these kind of conversations that I believe will happen first. It's going to be how we're going to handle the budget and where will money be best prioritized. So we appreciate you taking your time, because I think you're setting the stage for hopefully a series of these kind of conversations that help our delegation in turn help the Eastern Shore. Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought you were going to take Delegate Hutchison first, so I was a little caught off guard there, but sorry. So the presentation was awesome. Thank you for that. What age group does the museum lend itself to as far as tours? Is it school tours going through there? Is it mostly a driver of tourism with adult visitors and so forth?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Delegate. Thank you. It's the pre-K through 12. That is a key part of our mission because that's the education base of our mission. And as I mentioned, that at this year we will be serving 3,700 PK through 12 students. And the rest of the numbers, it ranges, the age ranges from, right from the very beginning, right through. We do tend to, shift to the, let's say the baby boomers in a sense. That's a key market for us, but they're also often the ones with a discretionary income to be able to spend more time in the region, in the state, traveling. And also the families are a really important concept for us too. And we spend a lot of energy on catering for those. Our summer camps, 2 weeks ago, we opened up summer camps for bookings and they're pretty much already full already. So and that summer today feels pretty chilly. We kind of think it's a long way off yet, but for us, it's just around the corner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Kristen, before I lose my manners, I saw hands pop up and I was mentioning Speaker Pro Tem. Delegate Grice is on appropriations and stands in a very strong position to assist you as well. So you have a strong Eastern Shore diverse team that stands ready when needed. Delegate Hutchinson.
Thank you, Delegate Adams. I'm curious, can you elaborate any further at this time about what's going on with CWDI and Cambridge Harbor, which I think is a pretty exciting opportunity from what I've heard?
I was really hoping somebody would ask that question. Thank you, Delegate Hutchinson. We are partnering with CWDI. We've been working with them, I would say, for over a year. And our goal there is to help them strengthen the history of shipbuilding in Cambridge and Dorchester County. And openly, I don't think it's a big secret at all. What we are working to achieve there, would like to build a shipyard there. This is CWDI is well aware of this, to service large traditional wooden vessels. That's our area of expertise. We already have about 17 or 18 clients. We really want to get cracking out there.
That's fantastic to hear, and I'm ready to stand by and help you any way I can.
Thank you. It would be a museum shipyard.
Yes.
But the employment, local employment, potentialities for advanced K through 12 programming there, our Rising Tide After School program, our Shipwright Apprentice program, we see ourselves as a rare opportunity for a really unusual community partnership in the region.
And from what I understand, a relationship still with the Richardson Museum as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Mounts, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I know we've gone over time, so I wasn't going to belabor it. I was going to apologize. When I saw the picture of Governor Hogan, I tried to make a joke about he was cutting a corner when he was throwing that line up. But since I got the microphone quickly, just the regional scope for the museum, I think it touches there were some figures. I'm not sure if you mentioned them in your presentation, Kristen. It's great to see you this morning, but do you have an updated statistic on regional scope for the museum?
Now, Johnny, what do you mean by that?
Visitors from outside of, where your visitors are coming from and who you're servicing.
Right. It's a really good question. Once the Welcome Center is open and up and running, we're going to commission Rockport to do another economic impact analysis. But those figures, we do have those figures, and I can share those with you. In fact, those are the latest figures.
And that's a pretty specific question. You can email them to them later. Email that to us later, but I think that's an important factor for everyone to keep in mind. So it's great to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. And the majority of our social media, because we have, we're small teams, big focus, is based on those states. Even though, 70% of the population of the states is within a 4.5-hour drive of St. Michael's, that leaves a lot of possibilities, and that's a goal that we are working toward.
Okay, Kristen, Liz, Jeff, thank you for your presentation. And Pete, to you and your presentation, I'll amend my earlier comments that the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum is not just a state and local in regional interest, it is indeed a national treasure. And thank you for sharing that wonderful information and the accomplishment. So thank you.
Everyone, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next we move to our federal partners. I only see one, so we'll start there and let the others chime in if they wish. Do we have Alyssa with Senator Van Hollen's office with us today?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chairman. No update from my office today. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Anybody else? I'm just not seeing faces right now. Okay, Charlotte Davis, I see a hand. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to announce today to the group that the Rural Maryland Council is hosting our legislative lunch at the Calvert House from noon to 2, and please stop by if you're available. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Charlotte. So we're going to have basically a 1-minute conversation on the item here for discussion on legislative letters. Next week, we're going to have, I believe, 2 letters drafted for one for University of Baltimore and Shore Health on their rural family track. I'd like to send that to the delegation early so you can take a look at it. We can review it for support. We also received the same request from Tidal Health, and we'll ask the delegation for the same level of support. I've not seen the bill yet that Senator Crows and Hutchinson are going to have for trauma care, but whenever you get that to us, we'll put that in front of the delegation. Again, members, if you have bills that you'd like for us to make formal support of, it's a simple matter of just reaching out to us so we can put this in front of the delegation. And I'm not sure we'll have any delegation sponsored legislation, but the minute I said that, there goes Kevin Hornberger's hand. So Delegate Hornberger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to provide some follow-up. This pertains to the LEOPS bill that we were entertaining earlier in the session. We did reach out to the state board for pensions, and the guidance that they gave us is that it should actually be a statewide bill. This is particularly for the EMT cohort opting into LEOPS. I know I'm throwing a lot of acronyms around here, but there's 2 jurisdictions on the shore that want their EMT staff to be able to participate in LEOPS. And the guidance that we were given from the pension board was to put in a statewide bill, which we are pursuing and has been requested in advance of the filing, the request deadline. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely be asking for a letter of support, but we want to make sure that those EMT staff can participate in the pension plan. So that was the only piece of legislation that was specifically looked at for a shore bill, but it looks like it's just going to be a letter of support. Thank you.
And Kevin, I'll tell you, I think that conversation, I've been part of some, maybe not on that exact issue, but it's going to be important to get that in front of the delegation so we can get some feedback coming and going. I've received some concern comments, and we'll save those comments for when we actually have the bill to talk about.
Great.
Okay, I see Speaker Pro Tem's hand up.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a FYI, I am sponsoring the sales and use of electricity tax for the agricultural usage bill. Last year, it was sponsored by myself and Delegate Lukey. But this is certainly going to help our agriculture community. And I can give everyone a copy of the bill just so you can be aware of it. But I think this is something that Eastern Shore delegation could certainly support, because our farmers would see if its passage would see a savings, in their uses of electricity for either livestock and many other uses of electricity. So I think this is one that's a neutral bill, but it's one that will benefit our farmers. So I just wanted to make that as an FYI for the group.
Okay, just look forward to taking that in and walking it through for your benefit. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Commissioner Porter hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You probably know why my hand went up.
I was trying to catch that before you wanted to communicate, but go ahead. I think it's important.
Well, a couple of things, if you don't mind, very quickly. To talk very briefly about Kerwin, I think everyone who knows me knows what I think about this, and I think it's exactly where I thought it was going to end up, and it's confusing. The time's not right. I couldn't tell you if all of these very smart people who are very, very smart people in the education system are confused about this. You can imagine what a poor dumb guy like me who has to figure out a way to pay for this is confused about it. So I was particularly in the beginning concerned about the Accountability and Implementation Board. I expressed that concern. To my knowledge, there was not any person that was on that board who was had knowledge of a school system or a school budget that was anywhere close to Caroline County. So LEOPS, I am very, very concerned about this bill. It is a law enforcement officers pension system. We cover our law enforcement officers. If this is extended to EMTs, it's going to have to be extended to paramedics, dispatchers, correctional officers. You're not just going to be able to stop this, and it's going to be a backbreaker. We spend an additional over $660,000 for pension costs for 30 law enforcement officers. If it probably 40,
I can't do this every week.
Probably 40 to 50% of our workforce is paramedics and EMTs. It's a backbreaker for us. So you and I talked about this the other day. You know where I stand. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Any other business from the members? So we have a dinner coming up with Eastern Shore Association Municipalities. That's a legislative dinner on January 31st at 5 p.m. at the Fisherman's Inn. Delegate Jacobs, two things. Number one, happy birthday to you on Saturday. All the members say happy birthday to Jay. I'm not going to sing for you.
Come on, sing for me, Chris.
Were you able to work on the that dinner on the 31st? And if so, would you like to share, or do you just want me to email that to the group, the subject?
What do you mean by the dinner?
Well, I think we had is this going to be a complimentary opportunity for the delegation to come through and
yes,
okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank the Mayor Rock Hall for that.
That's where I was headed. That's where I was headed. All right. Thank you very much. Seeing that there's no other business, I'd like to move to adjourn. Need a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good day.